Hey there, movie lovers. Welcome back to Rocky Watches Movies. Today we're setting our phasers to fun as we dive into the hilarious and out-of-this-world parody Spaceballs. This 1987 Mel Brooks comedy is a brilliant spoof of the Star Wars franchise and other sci-fi favourites. While it's now considered a cult classic, Spaceballs has a fascinating production story filled with quirky details, surprising facts, and little-known trivia. So prepare for ludicrous speed and join me as we uncover 20 things you never knew about Spaceballs. Long before Spaceballs hit the big screen, there was Hardware Wars from 1977, a 12-minute parody made by amateur filmmaker Ernie Fossilius. Shot for a mere $8,000 in an abandoned laundromat, the short film hilariously replaced spaceships with household appliances like toasters and tin foil. Despite the shoestring budget, Hardware Wars grossed around $500,000 and even caught the attention of George Lucas, who called it a cute little film. Fossilius, however, was not too happy with Spaceballs, claiming that Mel Brooks borrowed heavily from his work. Brooks originally wanted to title the movie Planet Moron. The name came about when Brooks, sitting in a 20th Century Fox commissary, was asked about his next project by an overly curious studio executive. In a moment of spontaneous humour, Brooks shouted Planet Moron, a joke that spurred the creation of what would eventually become Spaceballs. However, Brooks was forced to change the title after learning about Morons from Outer Space, a 1985 British sci-fi comedy. Needing something catchy, Brooks eventually chose Spaceballs, which referenced both the film's space setting and his love for screwball comedies. Even though parody films are usually protected from copyright lawsuits, Mel Brooks approached George Lucas to get his approval before moving forward with the project. Lucas, working on Howard the Duck at the time, agreed to give Brooks the green light on one condition: no merchandising. Lucas didn't want Spaceballs to make money off toys and products the way Star Wars did. Although Spaceballs couldn't sell any actual merchandise due to George Lucas's conditions, Mel Brooks brilliantly poked fun at the rampant merchandising scene in Star Wars. In the film, Yoggurt proudly shows off a wide range of Spaceballs products, from the toilet paper to the lunchbox, and even the flamethrower. While the film is now considered a sci-fi comedy classic, it wasn't a blockbuster when it first hit theatres in 1987. It grossed just over $38 million at the US box office on a budget of $22.7 million. Making it only a modest success. Critics were split on the movie, with some praising its wit and others calling it silly and juvenile. However, in the years that followed, Spaceballs found new life on home video and cable TV, steadily growing into a cult favourite. Bill Pullman's portrayal of the roguish Lone Star, a parody of Han Solo, made him a household name, but he wasn't Brooks' first pick for the role. Brooks initially wanted Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks to take the lead, but both actors turned it down. Brooks then turned to Pullman, who was a relatively unknown actor at the time. Pullman later credited Rick Moranis and John Candy for their star power, saying it gave Brooks the freedom to cast an up-and-comer like him. In the 1980s, green screen technology was still relatively new, and many of the cast and crew were concerned that it might damage their eyes. Although there was no real risk, Bill Pullman and his co-stars wore sunglasses between takes while filming scenes in front of the green screen. If you're enjoying the video, a subscribe to the channel would be as epic as using the Schwartz. Mel Brooks plays not one but two characters, President Scroob and Yoggurt. However, the Yoggurt costume proved problematic for Brooks, as the latex makeup caused him to break out in a severe rash that spread to his eyes. He also set strict limits on how long the makeup could take to apply. He gave his team just 1 hour to get him into the costume. If they took any longer, he threatened to walk off. While Joan Rivers provided the voice for the wisecracking Dot Matrix, the robot's movements were performed by Lorene Yarnell, an accomplished mime. Yarnell, part of the famous mime duo Shields and Yarnell, brought Dot Matrix to life with her robotic stilted movements. Rivers' voice work combined with Yarnell's physical performance made Dot Matrix one of the film's standout characters. Richard Carron, the actor who originally wore the Pizza the Hut costume, quit after suffering burns from the hot artificial cheese used on the suit. The melting cheese looked disturbingly realistic, but was so dangerous that Karen refused to return for reshoots. Effects artist Rick Lazzarini took over and donned the pizza suit for the rest of the shoot. Dom DeLuise, who provided the voice for Pizza, adamantly refused to wear the ridiculous costume from the beginning. John Candy's character Barf, a half-man, half-dog Mog, had a team of effects artists constantly working behind the scenes to operate his animatronic ears and tail. Candy had to perform with a 40-pound battery pack strapped to him to control them. But during some scenes, Barf's ears would move so much that they distracted from the action happening with other characters. At one point, Mel Brooks told the effects team to tone down the ear movements because they were upstaging the other actors. One of the ways Mel Brooks kept George Lucas happy was by hiring Lucas's company, Lucasfilm, to handle Spaceballs' post-production work. Brooks reportedly spent nearly $5 million on the services, ensuring Lucas's continued cooperation. After seeing the final film, Lucas sent Brooks a note saying how much he enjoyed it. When Bill Pullman was cast as Lone Star, I believe he was living under a rock, as he hadn't even seen the original Star Wars. Pullman relied on Mel Brooks' direction to guide his performance and didn't feel the need to watch it. Despite this, Pullman managed to perfectly capture the spirit of a classic space hero, combining the charm of Han Solo with Brooks' comedic touch. At the end of Spaceballs, John Hurt recreates his famous death scene from Alien, only this time it's caused by some bad diner food instead of a parasitic alien creature. Mel Brooks convinced Hurt to participate, thanks in part to having produced The Elephant Man, a film for which Hurt received an Oscar nomination. Also, as Lone Star and Barf pull into the diner parking lot, you can spot the Millennium Falcon parked right across from them. Brooks, a big fan of Star Wars, added the iconic ship as an Easter egg. Although he would have loved to show it soaring through space, the budget didn't allow for it, so he settled for a subtle cameo in the lot. When Mel Brooks created the character of Colonel Sanders, he had one actor in mind, Steve Martin. Brooks wanted Martin to play Dark Helmet's right-hand man, but Martin turned down the role due to scheduling conflicts. The part eventually went to George Weiner, who delivered a performance so spot-on that it's hard to imagine anyone else in the role. One of the most hilarious scenes in Spaceballs is when Dark Helmet is caught playing with action figures of himself and Princess Vespa. What makes it even funnier is that Rick Moranis improvised the entire scene. He was suffering from a fever at the time, but somehow came up with the line, "Your helmet is so big," proving that even under the weather, Moranis was a comedic genius. Spaceballs got its own novelisation, written by none other than R.L. Stine, the mastermind behind the Goosebumps series. Before he became famous for his spooky children's books, Stine wrote Spaceballs the book, which toned down some of the more adult humour and violence for younger readers. In 2008, Spaceballs returned to the small screen with Spaceballs the Animated Series. The show spoofed the Star Wars prequel trilogy, taking advantage of the renewed interest in the franchise after the release of Revenge of the Sith. Mel Brooks reprised his role as Yogurt, and Joan Rivers and Daphne Zuniga, who played Princess Vespa, also returned to voice their characters. Despite this, the show only lasted one season. There has been talk of a Spaceballs sequel almost since the original was released. Rick Moranis revealed in an interview that he and Brooks discussed making a Spaceballs 2 as early as the 1990s, with Moranis jokingly suggesting they call it Spaceballs 3, The Search for Spaceballs 2. Brooks himself considered a follow-up after the release of Star Wars The Force Awakens, tentatively titled Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money, but it never got off the ground. But Spaceballs 2 is apparently now in development. Comedian Josh Gad is working with Amazon MGM Studios to develop the long-awaited sequel. Gad will star in it and produce the film, with Mel Brooks returning just as a producer. After all these years, fans of Spaceballs can finally look forward to seeing Lone Star, Barf and Dark Helmet back on the big screen. That is, if it does actually get made. And there you have it, folks. You now know a little bit more about Spaceballs. If you enjoyed the video, which I presume you did as you got this far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos coming to Rocky Watches Movies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.